Okay, the last area we're going to explore about the scaffolds we created were the views, which are under app, views, tweets. Now, it created a bunch of these by default, and a few of them we won't actually need. So right away, we can get rid of the show.json.builder because we're not using the JSON stuff, the API thing. Remember, we deleted that from the controller. The index.json.builder and this underscore tweet.json.jbuilder. So you should end up with these 4 files. You will probably recognize the show, new, index, and edit. The underscore form, this is new. This is called a partial. And this is actually something clever that Rails does to save you code duplication. So let's start with index because that's where we kind of start off here, and it's the one that makes the most sense. This basically is it's going to be our list of tweets. So this can be helpful to have the tweets controller open alongside as we're going through. And in fact, I'm going to put them into column view, show layouts columns 2, so I can see the tweets controller over here on the right. I'll zoom this over and just make sure that my face over here doesn't cover up too much of it. Remember, in the index view of the, and let's get rid of the bar just for now. In the index view, I'm pulling out all the tweets, and I'm calling it @tweets. Now in Rails, this is special. This is a variable with the @ in front of it. Means that you can access it inside of the view that has the same name as the action that got called. So the index view is the view that gets loaded. And so inside of here, I can actually use the @tweets. So what's happening is it's using tables. And tables are something you can do in HTML. And it's creating a table, and it's filling in basically a new row for each of the tweets. So in HTML, you create a table with table here, and you close it. And then this is how you set the head of the table. So that's the top part. And then in here, lines 15 to 23, this is where the magic happens. This is Ruby code. So remember, this opens up Ruby. And in here, we're doing @tweets. This is the variable we got here, .each do tweet. And then we're basically going through this list of tweets. And for each one of them, we're putting in this little bit of HTML. So if I actually go into here and I do click view page source and scroll down to the bottom till you get to the table, look at this table head that's exactly the same as up here. User, content, column span 3, and then here tbody, tweets.each do. Okay, so I have one of these. I have a table, this stands for table row, and then td, this is the tweets user. So this actually is giving us the user for that tweet. And then the second is the tweet's content, so change tweet. And then the third is a link to, it's a link to the show path for that tweet. The fourth is a link to the edit path, edit tweet path. And this fifth is a link to the destroy path, although method is delete. Because destroy, it's going to go straight to the destroy action in the controller, and you can't call that with a GET request. So it's doing that little JavaScript hack. Another thing to note here is when we link to the tweet, if we just put the tweet in like this. This is actually a shortcut for tweet path, and then you pass through that tweet like this. So that's kind of just Rails shorthand. You can just put in the actual object in a link, and it usually defaults to the show path for that tweet. And it's only doing this once here because there's only one tweet. But you'll notice if I create a new one, another tweet. Although, of course, the user wasn't set here because I updated the tweet params so that it couldn't add a user. But now, if I right-click and do View Page Source and scroll down, I actually have two sets of these. And that's because we did that here. This is a loop. Literally everything inside of here will get called for each thing inside of this set of tweets. And this is Ruby code, fundamentally. So inside of here, inside of this loop, tweet is what we're calling each individual tweets, which is why this has the @ sign in front of it. But once you open up the loop, you call it tweet, and then inside of here, you don't need to use the @ sign anymore. This is a singular tweet, note, whereas this is plural. Okay, and then at the link to the bottom, we have new tweet path. I can do a little bit of styling here. If you look up Bootstrap for tables to make this look a little better, the easiest thing to do is you just basically add table class equals table. If I refresh this, you see it already formatted a lot easier. Also, you can just use that div container. So first of all, we don't need this notice on top. We already have that notice will show up automatically because we have in our layouts here, we have this flash messages thing that we looped over. So that's already going to be at the top. And I can push this in by doing div class equals container and then tabbing this entire thing in and then closing the div at the end. So that's a Bootstrap thing that actually will push all of the stuff inwards a little bit. It's still a little close to the top, but that's okay for now. You can mess with the Bootstrap table functionality, such as table inverse would make this inverted colors, or you can just label the table head a little differently. So you can give the table head classthead inverse, and that makes just the top inverted. So you can play around with that if you want to change the way this table looks, or just not even show it as a table. We're going to have to change the formatting if we want it to really look like Twitter, for example. So that's the index view. Now what about the show view? Well, the show view is also pretty basic right now. We don't need this notice at the top, and for now all I'll do is just wrap this in a container class, just so that it's kind of not all the way pushed over there to the side. Okay, that looks a little better. Could still be improved, obviously. Now, the new view, there's a lot we can do here. And this is where we get into some clever stuff. The new view and the edit view look very similar. So basically what Rails is realizing is that the form for both of them is almost the exact same thing. I mean, it is actually the exact same thing. So it's pulling out the form into what's called a partial. The partial, you can tell it's a partial because it has that little underscore, and it's rendering that inside of both of these. So that's line 3 and line 3 inside of edit and new. It's just rendering the same thing. What this is doing is it's passing through the @tweet that got pulled out here in new or edit. It's passing that through into the partial, and inside of the partial it's just referred to as tweet. So not @tweet because of how you pass it through like this. So the first one is what it'll be called inside of it. So we can wrap this in a div class container to have this whole thing in. That way this is indented a little bit. And I'll also update the form to use Bootstrap's form stylings, which is under components, forms. And it's basically, if you wrap each of these with a class form group, and then the text field, you add a form control class on. This is using what's called Rails form helpers. So this is not even HTML anymore, it's Rails now, but I can add a class to the text field like this. Class, what was it, form control. I believe this should work. Let's see. Class form control. Okay, so these are, this is the typical Bootstrap things, and we want to update the button as well. And we do that kind of like this, I guess. Button type submit. So here, class button, button primary. So that won't work. Let's see how we can add a class to the Rails button. Rails submit class. Okay, so you have to add the name of the button. So call it submit. Okay, that kind of works. I think if we add, oh, we forgot to add a form group around this guy, which gives the space that we needed. Cool. Now the cool thing about this, based on how we did it, actually is that if I edit a tweet, it has the same layout, except that I need to wrap this with a div container as well. Cool. So now I've basically gone through and I've edited the show, edit, all of these views. And fundamentally, the major difference between resources in any kind of application is just how you display them. So you can imagine that, this page right here, if we just went to Twitter and we just looked at, for example, a particular tweet, let's see how they do this. Copy link to tweet. So they might call it a status or something like that, and this is essentially the ID. Now they're showing it like this by popping it up, but here's basically the tweet text, and then they show you the person who did it and when it was posted and all sorts of things. But it's basically the same as this. They just have more fields on the tweet, and then they styled it differently. So that's it for editing the view for now. Really quickly, a quick addendum. When we added this submit text to the button, it overrode it so that on both the edit and the new page, it comes across as submit. We actually, if you get rid of this and get rid of the comma and just do it this way, Rails has a little bit of magic. So it'll call it create tweet if it's on the new page. And if we're on the edit page, it'll change the button to update tweet, even though it's the same form, which is actually really cool. Rails is a little bit special like that, and so this is actually probably an easier way to do it if you get rid of that and just put the submit button this way. But either way works. It's just the other way, the text is submit, no matter what you do. Cool. Just the more you know.